Mason, thanks for actually having me on today to talk about neurodiversity. A little bit about who I am. My name is Anita Aherne. I am the director and founder of Australia's very first National Autism Directory, which we launched in 2019, and now we proudly assist over 10,000 people a month who visit our online platform. It's a free platform, and we help people learn about autism, ADHD and neurodiversity. And we're a little bit like the Google, but for autism and neurodiversity, we help them find supports, services and events.
Okay, awesome. And then the people that go to your website, are they people that are neurodivergent, or is it more so parents that have kids with neurodivergent, or are they teachers who have to deal with students? Like, what kind of people go to that kind of website?
We have a really mixture of people who visit our site. Mainly, we assist parents and carers who have neurodivergent children, both minors and adults, because we all know that autistic and neurodivergent children grow into autistic and neurodivergent adults. So we assist parents and carers. We have a lot of educators go onto the site to learn more about their students and to learn about strategies to assist them in learning. And we have allied health professionals come on our side because they would like to sort of assist their clients better, so they have better outcomes from the therapies that they choose. So we have a really broad range of people who visit our site.
Yeah, awesome. And then what kind of prompted you to kind of start that site?
Yeah, when my son was 12, well, I have 3 neurodivergent children. They are all adults now.
Okay.
And when my son was transitioning from primary school to high school, he had lots of mental health issues. We were really struggling to find supports and services for him. We really didn't know what was happening. He ultimately received a diagnosis of autism. And when I was looking for supports and services myself, there was no central hub or platform to find everything I needed to know. And I was mind baffled. I was wasting time. My family was under immense pressure. My son's life was basically on the line that I needed to find supports really fast, and there was no central hub. That really prompted me and spurred me on to build Australia's first national platform. So other people who were in my situation did not have to go through the same struggles that I went through myself. And another reason, as I mentioned, I'm neurodivergent myself. I have ADHD, I have dysgraphia. I was diagnosed with autism during the pandemic. So I really felt that I had the experience, the expertise, and I really wanted to make a platform that was neuro-affirming, easy to use and accessible, and could really help other individuals that are in the same position as myself.
Yeah, okay. So that word you use is neuro-affirming. Can you touch on what that means a bit more?
Yeah, so when we talk about neuro-affirming, we actually talk about safe places for autistic and neurodivergent people. So, for example, if a autistic person was perhaps coming to use your particular service, that would mean that you understand their neurotype. You ask them things like, how they'd like to be referred to. I know some people like to be called autistic, some people like to be called person with autism. It's about respect and asking that. It's all about respecting that diversity and not trying to cure or fix an individual, but try and help them find supports to have a fulfilling life, to have a safe life, and to tackle those problems that they're perhaps facing in life, and not just to say, well, you're broken, let's fix you, and you should be more like a neurotypical person. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that your brain is amazing, your brain is unique. We want to protect that, but we want to find safe ways for you to navigate the world.
Yeah, okay, so it's kind of like giving them an individualised approach and not trying to change them, more so just make them live a better life.
100%.
Awesome, okay. And then are you aware of how certain schools and educational settings are kind of implementing that kind of stuff?
We see more and more happening, especially within Australia, that schools are learning more about neurodiversity in general. And now when we talk about neurodiversity, I should actually point out that neurodiversity refers to everybody's brain type. So, everybody's neurodiverse because not one person thinks like another person. Everyone has strengths and weaknesses. One person might be quite artistic or enjoy music and be really talented in that area. Another person might be very talented in numbers and maths and be architects and accountants. But what we're saying is the world needs a diverse range of people to function. We don't need one neurotype, and that's what makes the world amazing. And when we talk about being neurodivergent, what we mean is our brain type is slightly different to what's perceived as the typical brain. So the world is built for the typical brain. A lot of people say normal. We don't like to use that word because I don't think there is one normal or what's wrong or what's right. There's just diversity. So when we say that someone is neurodivergent, we're saying that they vary from the typical brain, and we refer them to that person as neurodivergent. And then if you're neurotypical, then you have sort of the common typical brain type.
Awesome, okay. And then, like, obviously in the educational setting, you're more so just teachers are trying to give each kid a more individualised approach and maybe little, I guess, differences from person to person so they can kind of excel and be the best person they can kind of be, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Is that what you're saying?
The education system is not very kind for autistic or neurodivergent and ADHD kids because it's built on the basis of, trying to service and educate the masses with one sort of framework or one curriculum, and it's trying to get everybody to fit into that framework. And what we're finding is a lot of autistic and neurodivergent students are struggling to fit into that framework. And teachers are not equipped, our educators are not equipped. They don't have the time, they don't have the training, they don't have the resources to fundamentally individually help each student. So they're sort of making it a general learning environment, and if you don't fit into that system, or if you don't fit into that box, this is where we disadvantage a lot of those neurodivergent students. So what we're trying to do now, and when we say we, I'm talking about the collective community, what we're trying to say is that neurodivergent, autistic, ADHD, kids with dyslexia, dysgraphia, mental health issues, they all deserve to have a formal education if they choose. Their brain is not wrong or broken. We don't need to sort of try and force that, square peg in that round hole. What we need to do is change the way we think and how we teach those particular students and really give students options. So, we might say to one student that you have to do a particular task one way, and instead of forcing that neurodivergent student to do it that way, we might give them an option of how to do it. For example, if you have students presenting in front of the classroom, you might have students that thrive in that environment and really love talking out loud and sharing their opinions. But the autistic student might feel very overwhelmed and sort of afraid to put themselves out there. They might actually be non-verbal, so talking. They might communicate in other ways. So that's not an option for them. But so what we're saying is to make it safe, instead of forcing that child to do that particular task, we're saying give them options and be understanding. And I think the most important thing is educational outcomes is not the be-all and end-all for an autistic student. So we're not saying that, if you send your child to a school, they have to come out with straight A's, or they have to come out with an ATAR score that's high enough for them to go into university. For some students, that educational outcome is not the end goal. The end goal for some students is to make sure that they're mentally healthy, that they have social supports and can navigate friendships in a safe way, that they can make career choices that suit their own being, their own brain, whether that being going on to university or whether it's getting an apprenticeship or whether it's volunteering. It's choosing pathways that suit each student rather than that sort of blindly following that educational outcome of high marks and, a high ATAR or even a completion of school.
And that's obviously the educational setting. Like, do you find similar things happen as they kind of move into the workforce and stuff as well?
Yeah, the workforce is another area that I'm hugely passionate about, and I do write a lot of articles on the benefits of hiring neurodivergent employees. What we find is a lot of employers in particular hire with a return on investment in mind. So what I mean by that is when you're hiring a staff, the expectation is that that employee will either generate income for the company, will improve systems and processes for that company, which then in turn generates revenue, or they will service some type of service, whether it be training other staff or providing a support for other staff members, with the aim of generating revenue. And we understand that. So a lot of employers are quite scared to hire neurodivergent or autistic staff because they think that that return on investment is not going to be there for them. However, what we're saying is that if we consider that one in, I think it's as high as 1 in 10 people in the world are neurodivergent, chances are you already have neurodivergent staff in your team. And they're either too afraid to tell you and disclose their diagnosis, or they just want to keep it a secret and just sort of struggle. And by not providing that safe and secure environment, you're not getting the best out of your team. You're not fostering that safe relationship for them to thrive and grow and ultimately help your organisation. So we're saying that not only can neurodivergent staff be a huge benefit and return on investment because it promotes loyalty and opens up a whole new customer base for you, and plus you'll get an employee that takes fewer. It's actual fact that autistic employees take fewer sick days than non-autistic employees. Their work cover claims are lower because they're very some not all are very rigid in processes and safety and procedure. And disabled people have money. So if you're seen to be an inclusive and diverse employer, you will actually gain customers and clients by doing so. So we're really we're wanting to raise that awareness about hiring neurodivergent and disabled in general employees.
And then, like, as an employer, like, what would they do for someone that's neurodivergent versus someone neurotypical? Like, how would they treat that person different?
There is actually not a lot that needs to change in a workforce. You really just need to make that workspace safe, and that might mean asking your employees what they need to feel supported and to feel safe and to really thrive in that workspace. It might be that they need a quiet space to go to on lunch. So instead of having a very crowded, noisy lunchroom where they have to talk to people and interact and it's very noisy, there might be a quiet space for them to go so they can regulate their emotions and sensory regulate themselves to continue on in the day. It might be that they need to wear headphones while, noise-cancelling headphones while they're working. It might mean that there might need to be a flexible work day. Maybe 3 days in the office, 3 days at home. I know that's a bit controversial at the moment, but if we say that by making compromises like that, you're actually going to increase your return on investment on that employee and generate more income for your business, why wouldn't you consider something like that? It could also mean that when you're giving instructions to that neurodivergent employee, that you are clear and concise. I will give you an example. You might say to someone, can you just have a look at this email for me and tell me what you think? Now, for a neurodivergent person, we have no idea what that means. Do you want us to read? Do you want us to proofread that and correct the grammar? Do you want us to make input about the content and check its facts? Do you want us to make sure that it's not too long? Do you want us to make sure you're using the right font? What do you mean? So it means giving clear and concise directions. And it also means that you don't get annoyed or angry if questions are asked to follow that up. So A neurodivergent employee might have to ask 3 or 4 questions to get clarity on that particular task that they've been told. And sometimes, a manager might go, look, that's what you're here. Just get on and do it. But we're saying that take a step back and think that clarity is going to get you the best outcome if you provide and you're patient and understanding.
So those little changes let you kind of get a better overall employee and therefore better return on investment.
Absolutely. I mean, I've given you very few examples, and those examples I've given you cost the organisation nothing to implement. But we could also talk about things like making your website accessible. So, for example, that might be having the option to make font easily readable for dyslexic individuals. There are widgets you can put on your website. It can actually ensure that you have alt text on all your images. It could mean that when you are making a video, that you have captions on all video, because as an ADHDer myself, sometimes my brain takes a little bit of time to catch up to what's being said. So having captions on all training modules or anything you put out in your organisation can actually make that so much easier for a neurodivergent individual.
Awesome, okay. We might stray a little bit because, at our job we have a lot of people that come in and we take them through exercise therapy. In your opinion and your research, is there benefits to exercise for people that are neurodivergent?
Absolutely. Okay. It is well documented, as you know, that exercise facilitates healthy mental health. Obviously, it is great for physical health. There are huge benefits to exercise. Now, one thing that I'll share with you, that an autistic person has a reduced life expectancy of between, now I wrote this down, bear with me because I have to make sure that I get my facts. I share this quite often. An autistic person has a reduced life expectancy of between 30 and 36 years in the general population. And a person with ADHD has a reduced life expectancy of up to 13 years from the general population. Now, that's not to say that autism and ADHD affects your health so you don't live as long. What I'm saying is there are factors in for a neurodivergent person that makes their life, that impacts their life. Now, that could be social isolation. It could be not accessing health care, and it could be not looking after their physical health, which is what we're talking about. Exercise is great for both physical and mental health. So, yes, it is hugely impactful and hugely important for an autistic or a neurodivergent person. But it is also hard if we expect a neurodivergent individual to jump into movement and exercise as a neurotypical person. For example, I have tried to go to a gym and work out, and I love working out. The problem I have is when I go to a gym, I don't want to talk to anyone and I don't want to interact with anyone. And for some reason, everybody who runs a gym thinks that I want to be high-fived and encouraged, and they all want to think that I want feedback. When in actual fact, I just do not want to even make eye contact with anybody. And that stops me from exercising. And I think it's important to understand a neurotype before you develop any type of movement or exercise or physical movement for a neurodivergent person, to understand what would work for them. Would it work if you just handed them a sheet of paper with exercises and movements and go, this is what I need you to do? If you have any questions, you can come and see me. Asking questions like, if I see you doing the movement wrong, would you like me to come and tell you while you're doing the movement or exercise, or would you like me to tell you after you've finished? Would you prefer that I email you all the information and observe you and then give you feedback after? What would actually make working out safe for you? And I think that's important to understand when you're working with a neurodivergent individual with movement and exercise to ensure overall health. So we make huge impacts on those reduced life expectancies, because it's hugely important, and it's why I do what I do.
Yeah, okay. So just to kind of clarify as well, like what exercise you do doesn't exactly matter. It's probably more so how you approach the exercise or how you structure it.
Yes, movement, any type of movement. I know I'm not an expert. This is your area, Mason. I'm not an expert in movement, but we know, and it's really well documented and really well spoken about, that any type of movement is healthy for your body and then impacts that mental health. So any type of movement is always going to be beneficial. I have an Apple Watch, for example, that tells me to stand up, and that is great for me. It's a visual reminder. It also buzzes, so it gives me a secondary reminder. If I do see it visually and then I get distracted, it gives me a buzz. So those tools are hugely important. I have an alarm on my iPhone that really schedules out times where I should be making movement or have a break. For example, at lunchtime, I make a conscious effort to stop what I'm doing and to either just go in the backyard and walk around or play with my two amazing Labradors or do some movement, because if I'm not reminded or I have those multi-levels of reminders, it just doesn't happen for me. And that doesn't mean I don't want to do it. It just means that my brain cannot kick into gear to do what I'm supposed to do. I know what I'm supposed to do. I know how to do it. I just need to ensure that all the blocks are stacked up neatly so I can actually do it easily. And, I have those reminders. And, if I do go to a gym, that I make sure that no one's high-fiving me, because that's, give me a high five, and that's a sure way to make sure that I'm out the door and you'll never see me again.
Good stuff. Okay. And that's exercise as well. Do you think as well, like things like diet play a role as well?
Yeah, look, that's a really important, again, as an ADHD individual, diet for me is always a struggle. I've struggled with eating disorders. I have struggled eating healthy because sometimes I can go 16 hours without eating or drinking because I'm in hyperfocus, and then I'll realise I'll have to drink and I'll have to eat, and then I eat whatever's available, so I'm not prepared. So I think it's really important to make sure that we are given tools and education, not only how to eat healthy, because most of us know what to do. There is so much information talked about so often. Everybody really knows how to eat healthy and what to do. It's about putting tools in place to make sure that we can do it. It's reminders to eat and drink. It's to having supportive people around us that says, hey, have you had something to drink today? When was the last time you had a drink of water? I think I might shock you if I say it could go a week without me having a sip of water.
Okay.
And that's not because I don't want to drink water. It's because I'm chasing dopamine. So I will have a fruit juice, or I'll have a Coke, or I'll have a tea. I drink a lot of tea. I know that's water, but not really. But I'm chasing that next sort of dopamine hit to have those lovely flavours in my mouth is, a great way to get instant dopamine. So I think to have good people around you to remind you, especially if you're working with professionals, it's always, we don't want to be lectured because we know what we're doing wrong. We just want to be given tools about how we can navigate those things to make healthier choices and to make the choices, really, just to remind us to do it.
And then, last one as well, how much do you think sleep plays a role as well in how, a neurodivergent person can function day to day as well?
Yeah, so it is really well documented that autistic people have very impacted sleep. People with ADHD have really impacted sleep. Their cycles and rhythms are completely out of, sometimes just completely off the charts. For example, I can't function in the morning. When I say function, I get up and I do what I have to do. But I perform better after 12 o'clock and later in the night. And there's lots of documentation, and we've written a lot about it on the website, that our brains are actually wired different. Our cycles and our rhythms are actually wired differently to our typical person. So when we say, for example, why don't you get up at 5 a.m. and do some exercising and then you're set for the day, in actual fact that probably won't work for the average person who is neurodivergent, because our cycles and our rhythms work a little bit different. But if we say, okay, look, why don't we try that at 8 o'clock at night when you get going and start doing some exercise and movement then, I think what we have to do is work out what everybody feels comfortable with doing. When's their optimal time to do that movement and to eat. I know we're talking about sleep. I have veered off a little bit, but I think sleep plays an important role in that, because you'll often find that autistic people will stay up later, get up later, and their sleep will be broken, which is why a lot of people talk about taking things like melatonin to help with sleep. That then affects learning, and I think a lot more research needs to be done in how to help neurodivergent people with sleep in that area.
And then obviously, like you said, they prefer to stay up late and wake up later kind of thing as well. Is that something that through practice could be reversed, or is that just kind of the way they are? It doesn't. If you try and change it, they just feel like they feel different. Like, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think some people that might work. I mean, I can't be general. I think it really depends on the person. I think what's happening is this comes back to trying to fit, a square peg in a round hole. If we say to an ADHD person, you have to exercise at 5 o'clock, because that's when the most people get the best out of life. And if you have a look at all the business people who are running multi-million-dollar corporations, they get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and they make their bed and then they go to work. And most of us will go, yeah, look, great for them, but it will not work for me. It just won't work. And I don't know why I have to be forced to do that. Why? Just because it's working for one person, doesn't mean it's going to work for another person. So I think, you could try it with the person. I don't think you can be close-minded. I think you have to try lots of different things to see what works for you. But I think ultimately trying to force a neurodivergent person to do what is perceived as the normal thing to do, I think is wrong, and why we're having those poor life outcomes, because we're sort of not just going, okay, you're neurodivergent, this is what works for you, great, let's just go with what works for you.
So there is a bit of obviously trial and error involved, but at the end of the day, it's like anything else, an individualised approach.
100%, and I think that is the main thing that's impacting life outcomes, is where we have this idea of how life should be, how we should be living a life. I don't know how many motivational webinars I've been to where you have to get up at 5 o'clock, you have to exercise, you have to make your bed, you have to do this and you have to do that, and that's how you'll be successful. Well, no, the way you'll be successful is if you accept who you are, if you accept your brain type and you play to your strengths, if you find ways to be healthy that fits into your way of thinking and way of being, then that is the way that you're going to achieve greatness in your life.
Yeah. And then, like, on top of that as well, like, is it up to the kind of individual as well to recognise what they respond better to, recognising patterns, things like that, so then they can plan their day or tell their boss or tell their teacher, so they then also let others help them get better outcomes? Does that make sense?
Yeah, look, we know what works for us, but it's not always safe to tell other people. For example, for a student, if they were to say to a teacher, I don't want to present to the class today, the teacher will most likely go, well, we are building resilience. You have to present to the class today. Get out of your comfort zone. Do you think when you go and work at a job, you can tell your boss that you just don't want to do a task today? So then that student is forced to do that task, because the educator thinks it's building resilience, and the parents may think it's building resilience. But what you're doing is facilitating anxiety. You're facilitating that's not safe to ask for what you need. It's facilitating fear, and it's really not assisting you in any way whatsoever. You're not building resilience. If you're a neurodivergent person, you are really just imploding. And this analogy is not new, but I use this analogy. If you have a Coke bottle and you shake it up throughout the day, a teacher is trying to get you to get out of the comfort zone. You might shake that up a little bit. You've got bells and whistles going on at the school, people yelling in the classroom. You might shake that up a little bit more. and this goes for the workforce as well. I'm just using school as the analogy. You might have teachers berating you about not having homework done or not being up to standard. You might shake that Coke bottle. And then what will happen if you have a look at the Coke bottle? It looks fine from the outside. I don't know if you've ever gone to a shelf into 7-Eleven or a supermarket, picked up a Coke bottle, opened it, and it's exploded because you didn't realise that someone had shaken it. But that's what's happening to a neurodivergent person. And then where it's often a safe space for them, they release that cap and it explodes everywhere, which is what's happening to your brain. You melt down, you might cry, you might, become non-verbal. You just want to sort of lock yourself in the room. It all becomes too much. And I think that's what's happening when we try and express what we want and what we need. But I think what we have to do is to ensure that those people who are educating our neurodivergent people, who are employing our neurodivergent people, and who are working with our neurodivergent people, that they listen to them and they understand their needs and respect that. Now, I'm not saying that they should never be pushed out of their comfort zone, because that's how we all learn. But what I am saying is we need to be mindful and respectful and work in a safe way with that neurodivergent person.
Yeah. And just to clarify as well, you're not saying someone like a neurodivergent person should never be out of their comfort zone, but obviously just small bits at a time, never too much. Yeah, that makes sense.
Absolutely. I mean, we all, no matter who we are, the diversity of the brain, we should always be pushing ourselves and trying to achieve more and be healthier and better and learn. We're just saying there are ways that we can do that. Someone who, for example, an autistic person who does not use voice or speech to communicate, and they use communication boards, they can feel safe in using communication boards. We shouldn't be saying, don't ever use that communication board. You have to use your voice. I know you have a voice. It would be great if that person could learn to use their voice. However, if they're choosing to communicate with communication cards or an app on the iPad, I think we need to step back and go, that is okay, if that's the way that they want to communicate. We can practice our words on occasion to see whether they wish to. But, I respect the way you want to communicate, and I will communicate that way with you.
Gotcha. And then for someone like, what we get a lot of in here is children with autism and ADHD and stuff. Obviously, because they're so young, they perhaps don't know how to communicate that as well, perhaps don't know what works best for them. Is there any way you would suggest we do pick up on certain things, or so that we can try and give a better approach to exercise or a better approach to therapy kind of thing?
Yeah, I think parents are a wealth of information.
Yeah.
I think you really need to listen and believe the parents. And that goes for education as well. The parents are the biggest advocate for autistic and neurodivergent children. They know their children. They know what they can want to do. And I don't think we should ever force a child or a young person or anyone in particular to do something that they don't want to do. We can show them. I think it's really important to find how they learn. Are they a visual learner? Do they need it written down? Do they need to be shown? I think we need to learn how they learn. So, for example, if they're learning a new movement or exercise, would they prefer it to be shown on a YouTube video, someone else doing it, so they can watch it? Would they prefer it written down so you can give them step-by-step instructions? Or would they prefer to actually do it with you and learn, while you're actually learning it? And I think the parents are a wealth of information. I always ask the parents how that person learns, what's the best way to do it. Ask the young person. I think at a very young age, kids are smart and they know what they want. If you go to a child, would you like to watch a YouTube video on how this person is exercising, or would you like me to show you? They will tell you what they want. And I think it might surprise you, because a lot of people might go, of course they're going to watch the YouTube video. No, kids, I think we underestimate our young people, and I think we underestimate not only their ability to learn, but their willingness, you know what I'm trying to say, their willingness to learn.
Yeah.
I don't think we should underestimate them no matter what their age. I think we should ask them and really listen to the parents and what they're saying.
Yeah, awesome. We've got some other questions here as well. What are, probably building more so on other stuff you said, like what are some other common misconceptions around neurodiversity?
So the most common misconception, especially in autism, is that autism is an intellectual disability. And it's not. Autism is a different neurotype. It's a different way of thinking. It can be a communication issue, whereas a person doesn't understand social cues, sarcasm, or it might be that someone doesn't, verbally communicate. They might use cards. It's a sensory issue in that some people experience all the senses in the world. It might be being highly sensitive to smell and touch. We know a lot of autistic people hate things like scratchy tags, and that's not just because it's uncomfortable. What happens is if you have a scratchy tag, that's all you can focus on. Your brain really cannot regulate and think of anything else other than this scratchy tag. So it can be sensory, communication. And I think there's lots of, coexisting, diagnosis that goes along with autism. We find that there's a higher, if you have autism, you're highly likely to be epileptic as well, have epilepsy. ADHD and autism are common, diagnosis to go together. Dyslexia or dysgraphia are often, co-diagnosis side by side. So I think two things are, it's not an intellectual disability. I think you should always assume a person with autism, even if they are non-verbal, that they understand what you're saying and they are listening, even if they're not making eye contact with you or you think that they are distracted. They are listening to you. And I don't think eye contact plays a huge role in listening and understanding. And I think that's sort of another sort of huge misconception is everybody thinks that you have to be making eye contact to really understand or to show that you're listening. And I don't think that's the case. A lot of actually autistic people can't listen and comprehend if they're looking and making eye contact with you because all they're thinking about is your eyes. Am I staring too much? Should I look away? Should I blink? I feel very uncomfortable, therefore I feel uncomfortable. I can't absorb the information that I'm being told. So I think they're sort of two very important things to consider when you're speaking and working with an autistic person.
Yeah, it's all interesting stuff as well. And then, how would you suggest, we should kind of do to try and reduce that stigma around autism and ADHD and all those sort of things?
Mason, we're doing it. We're having a conversation. I think a lot of people who haven't been exposed to autism and ADHD and neurodiversity have a preconceived idea about what it looks like. You might have been watching The Big Bang Theory, so you think, Sheldon is the typical autistic, male. Even though the show never said he was autistic, I think we all sort of know that he really sort of is portraying that particular role. You might, if you're of my genre, you might have watched Rain Man and you think that is what autism looks like. I think the more people who are neurodivergent that are speaking out and sharing their experiences, the more we can understand that autism is such a diverse spectrum. And it's not linear. So it's not, you have someone, we often talk about low and high functioning. And that's so misconceiving. You don't have someone sort of lower on the end of the autism spectrum and someone on the higher end of the functioning spectrum. Because a person who is perceived to have high needs, that actually may fluctuate day to day, month to month, even year to year. It might mean that they are socially, they love socialising, they can make eye contact, and they really don't look autistic. So you might go, oh, they don't seem autistic, so they must be really high functioning. But what you don't see is the preparation that goes into that socialising. You don't see the aftermath of the socialisation. You don't see the meltdowns and the sensory issues that happen behind the scenes. And the same for for low functioning. You might say that they're low functioning, so because they might be non-verbal. But then you can't assume that that person doesn't understand everything you're saying and doesn't want to communicate with you. So I think that's really important to understand.
Good. That's all the questions we had. What was the name of your website again? Sorry.
It's we're called Living on the Spectrum, and it's just livingонthespectrum.com. We are a free website, so what we do is like I mentioned, we're like the Google for autism and neurodiversity. So if you're looking for, physiotherapists or allied health or social groups or music or art therapy or anything really to do with autism and neurodiversity. So neurodiversity is anything brain-based. You can find it on the directory. And also we're a media site. So we do lots of stories and share lots of information. So if you're trying to learn more about neurodiversity, you can actually go on and share. Now this is Neurodiversity Week, so it's great that we're talking about that, sort of understanding what neurodiversity is. I'm thrilled to be sharing it and chatting with you about what it is, but I'm always open to chat to anybody who'd like to talk and learn more, because my primary goal is to have an impact on those reduced life expectancies, because I always say I have stake in the game. It affects me, it affects my children. So I really think it's up to people to start talking and having conversation and not just being aware, but trying to make a conscious effort to make the world a little bit more inclusive for neurodivergent people.
That's good. No, I definitely, even just from the conversation we've had, I definitely learn a lot, particularly things you're talking about around the individualising exercise and things like that. So you want to turn that line on? Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, like particularly talking about like individual exercising and how you can make these little subtle changes and you get such a better outcome for those personals. It's not just exercise, but anything in life. And that's something I'll definitely try and consider more in the future as well. If I'm not perhaps getting as much as I could out of that person as well. And I think that's really good stuff.
It's really just trial and error. I think if you go in thinking, well, this is how the other person. There's a great saying there's a great saying that goes around that is, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. Everybody is different. Their needs are different. That's why autism in particular is so very hard to sort of almost get your head around, because, there are so many variations of autism and people, how they present and what they find safe and what they need to support themselves. It's very varied. So it's important to make sure that you ask the question, what will make you feel safe? What will make it easier for you to fulfill this particular task? How can I help you sort of navigate this particular environment?
And is there anything we haven't touched on that you think might be important for us or important for people to know, or even us as physiotherapists, something that we should know that we haven't touched on yet?
No, I think we've really covered such a broad range of information. I'm very mindful that, we've focused on some really important things about really sort of giving autistic people autonomy and being respectful, pushing beyond our comfort sometimes are great for anybody, but also respecting the autistic way of being. And I think it's a balance that I don't think anybody expects yourself or anybody to get right the first time. But I think if you are trying and asking the right questions, I think that's a positive way forward. And that's all the autistic and the neurodivergent community wants.
Awesome. Thanks for your time. I don't have any other questions. I think you touched on a lot and you seem like a wealth of knowledge as well, which is really good. You clearly know your stuff. But thank you for your time. That was really, really good actually. I enjoyed that.
Oh, amazing. Well, I do hope you've learned a little bit more about
definitely did, yeah.
neurodiversity and neurodivergent, and you follow us on the website and you follow our social media.
Yep, awesome.
And, I'd love to chat any other time, or if you've got any other questions, I'm always available.
Yeah, we've got your email, so if you have anything else, so definitely send it through. If someone has a tricky case or patient at all, definitely ask some questions. We definitely get some tricky ones every now and then, but yeah, no, that was actually really good. I enjoyed that.
Amazing. Awesome. No, that was great. Thanks heaps for that.
No worries, all, Anita. I might just in the meeting now. But yeah, thank you again. That was really, really good.
I'm just going to take a quick pick. Is that
Yep,
okay?
that's fine. Yeah.
All right. Love it.
Got it. Awesome.
Thanks, Mason. Really great chatting to you.
No, you too. Thank you.
When do you think this will go up? You'll tag me?
Yeah, we'll definitely tag you. Michelle's our head of marketing here, but then we have Belle, who's down in New South Wales. I'm not sure exactly when it will go up. I assume it'll probably be this week because it is Neurodiversity week. But yeah, they'll definitely tag you and then probably email you if we need anything else as well. But yeah, we'll try and spread it as much as we can.
Thanks, Mason.
Awesome. Thanks, Anita. Have a good one, eh?
Have a great day. Bye.
See ya.